So the one that I typically use for a Lightbox plugin to display images, this is even on my own website, I use one called fancybox, and you can find that on, there's actually 2 pages. You got to make sure you use this one with the white background. It's fancyapps.com is where you can go to get it. And it outlines everything that it can do, gives you a ton of info. But what it does is when you click on an image, when it's properly installed and all hooked up, is this. So it brings it up, it displays, if you add a title to it, it'll display a title. And yes.
Are you recording
this? Yes. This is being recorded. And when you set it up so that way the images are in groups, you can actually navigate through. So this is, as an artist, as an individual who's trying to show creative work presentation is everything. Presentation can make or break getting an interview, a job, or a position, or even, a place at a graduate school. So being able to show your work professionally in a manner like this is great. And fancybox is flexible, so if somebody happens to be on the go and they pull this up on a tablet or whatever, you're still going to look good. So regardless of whatever device they're looking up your work on. So, all right, how do we set this up? I'm going to show this to you guys in just a bare minimum stripped down website here. So I've got just a blank page. I'm using a template right out of Dreamweaver because it's not really important as to what we use for this. So what you're going to do to start with is you have to actually download some files for fancybox. So if you look here, it says license and download. I'm going to click on that, and then I'm going to come down here and download the zip folder. And then I'm going to go and find that folder, and I'm going to move the zip folder right to my website folder, so my main website folder. And I'm going to unzip the folder. And then first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to rename it because I'm going to have to point to the files inside of here. So I'm going to call it fancybox. And I'm going to open it up. And what you'll see is there's a demo file in here if you need to go and take that, pop it open. You could pop that open in Dreamweaver and see how they set stuff up and all of that if you need to, just to tear apart a working example. So I've got that all set. Now what I'm going to do is I just need to hook up all the resource files. So all my resource files to make this work are in the fancybox folder. And to set this up, I'm just going to copy and paste from the fancybox website. So you see right here, they give you instructions. All of this stuff, it looks exactly like something that would go in the header. So therefore, I'm going to copy all of that, and I'm going to place that in the header. I usually like to put it below my CSS. Now I just need to make sure that it's pointing to that folder that I put inside of my web directory. And you can see here, this is already, the reason I named it fancybox is because this is already named fancybox. So the only thing you need to do is get rid of these forward slashes and be very careful and make sure that you get rid of all of them, because if one is left, it will break and nothing will work. So I'm just going to double check fancybox all the way up through. Okay, so that's good. So now my web page is pointing to the fancybox folder and all the resources that make it work. So the next bit is I need to add, I'm going to skip over the middle section for now. Basically we need to add the functionality that makes all of the JavaScript fire and makes the whole thing work. So to do that, I'm going to grab this third one here, this bit of JavaScript. I'm going to copy that, and that also goes in the header, and I'm just going to put that right underneath code that I already added. Okay, so that should all be good if I save it and then preview in my browser. And I'm going to use Chrome. There's nothing on my page, so it's blank, but I'm going to inspect. And if there was something wrong with the connection, I'd see a little error over here, but I'm not getting anything, so I'm going to assume everything's good right now, and I'm just going to continue on with setting everything else up. Okay, so how do we make an image actually use fancybox and work? It's super simple. You guys, most of you have probably created a link now where it's a clickable image that points somewheres. So I'm going to copy their setup here, and that's all this is. It's just a link with an image inside of it. So the way this works is you need to, in the link portion, point to the image you want to open in the fancybox. So this will be the larger image. And then the image inside of the link, which is just an image tag, can be a thumbnail. So you could crop all of your images down to a nice little square if you wanted to, or you could use the original image and point to it in both locations. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop an image in, and then I'm going to do the same thing here. So my link portion has to point to a source that it's going to use to display. And I'm actually going to make this smaller. Okay, so just to review that, I've got all of my resource files, I've got the JavaScript that makes it function, and then I've got my link set up, and you could have multiples of these. So if you've got multiple images that you're going to use, it's copy and paste, and then you just change your image. You change the image that it's pointing to. Now I'm going to test this out. So here's my web page. I'm not getting any errors down here. I'm going to see what happens when I click, and it works. So it's pretty simple to set up and use. And if these were different images, the default that I used from the fancybox site, it'll scroll right through. And like I said, I set a smaller width on this image, so it shrunk it down. So this is my thumbnail. When I click on it, it shows the actual, full-size physical image. And if you wanted to add a title under here, say you've got, you want to put the name of the work or something down on there, what you would do is that within the link portion, you're just going to add title, save. It'll be different for each one depending on what you're doing. Refresh. So now when I click on this, I have the title of the work, Adorable Puppy, shows up there. So it's pretty flexible, lets you do a lot of stuff. Like I said, it's responsive to screen width. In this case, it's short enough to be a mobile image already, but it'll resize itself. Basically, it's dependent on the size of the browser window and how large your original image is. So if you wanted to show this a decent size in the browser, save it as a large image. I usually go with something somewhere around 800 pixels wide or so if possible, just so that way it looks good on a larger screen.